I bought a Pentax K1000 film camera at a thrift store in Minneapolis last August for $12. The light meter still worked. The shutter was crisp. I opened the back to check the film door seal and saw there was a roll already loaded. The frame counter showed 24. The roll had been completely exposed and never advanced past the final frame. I closed the back carefully and dropped the camera at a local development lab the next morning. 2 days later the lab called me. They asked if I had loaded the film myself. I said I had not. They said the negatives were photographs of someone's home interior. They asked if I wanted to come look. Second Bloom is a small charity thrift store on Lyndale Avenue. The shop benefits a hospice in St. Paul. The owner is a woman named Beverly Tan who has run it for 20 years. She keeps a paper donation log for every item that comes in. The camera had been donated in late July. The donor was listed in the log as Margaret Helle. Address: Crescent Pines Assisted Living Facility, St. Paul, Minnesota. Beverly remembered Margaret. She said Margaret had brought in a single cardboard box of household items. The camera. A photograph album. Some books. Margaret had not stayed to shop. She had handed Beverly the box and walked back to the car. A nephew was waiting in. I have been buying old film cameras for 10 years. I have about 30 of them on a bookshelf in my apartment. Pentax, Olympus, Canon, Nikon. Most were thrift store finds or estate sale buys. I shoot a roll through each one to test it and then I shelve it. I do not sell them. I drink coffee in the morning and process my negatives on weekends. The Pentax K1000 is a common camera. They are easy to find in working condition. The reason I bought this one was the light meter. Most of them go bad over the decades. This one was still calibrated. I expected to shoot a test roll. I did not expect to develop someone else's. The lab tech was a man named Aaron Cortez. He had been processing film for 14 years. He laid out a contact sheet on the light table when I walked in. 24 small prints arranged in 4 rows of 6. The first frame was a living room. Worn hardwood floor. A bay window with curtains pulled to one side. A green couch. I stood looking at the print for a long time. The couch on the contact sheet was mine. The couch I had bought from a furniture store in St. Paul 3 years ago. The room around it was my own living room. The angle of the photograph was from a corner of the room I sit in often. I went home and matched every frame. 24 photographs. 24 rooms or corners of rooms in my apartment. The kitchen with my exact cabinets. The bedroom with the bed in the same position I sleep in. The bathroom with my own framed print above the toilet. The hallway with the carpet I had picked out at a flooring store. The angle of every photograph was a place I had stood or sat or walked through. The lighting in the photographs was natural daylight. The walls were painted the same color as mine. The Pentax had been loaded by someone who knew my home well. The camera had been donated by a woman in an assisted living facility. I asked Aaron to enlarge one of the negatives so I could read the date stamp printed on the frame. Older film backs have a date imprint feature. The Pentax K1000 does not. The date was printed on the negative itself. Aaron called it a film stock factory mark. Kodak Gold of a certain era was emulsion stamped with the year of expiration. The expiration year on the roll was 2016. He calculated the shooting date as approximately 2015 based on the chemistry. I moved into my apartment in October 2016. The film had been shot in the months before my move. The negatives had been sitting in the camera ever since. I drove to Crescent Pines in St. Paul the following weekend. Margaret Helle was 82. She lived in a small private suite with a window that looked out on a courtyard garden. The nurse who let me in said Margaret had good days and bad days. This was a good day. I sat across from her at her small table and showed her the contact sheet. She studied each print carefully with a magnifying glass. She told me she had once lived in the apartment in the photographs. She had moved out in 2015 because her doctor recommended assisted care. She had taken the photographs herself with the Pentax in the months before she left. I told Margaret I had moved into the apartment in October 2016. She told me that was about a year after she had moved out. She said the apartment had been empty for a long time before she sold it. The previous tenant had been her roommate of 40 years. Margaret had been a public school librarian. Her roommate had been a piano tuner who traveled for work. She said her roommate had looked exactly like me. She did not mean similar. She did not mean a resemblance. She told me her roommate had my face. My exact face. She said his name was Henrik. Henrik Larsson. He had disappeared from the apartment in the autumn of 1973. Margaret asked me to find frame 17 on the contact sheet. I found it. It was the photograph I had been avoiding since Aaron handed me the prints. The angle was from inside my bedroom closet looking out toward the bed. The closet door was open just a few inches. The bed was made. Someone was asleep on top of the covers. The face on the pillow was visible in profile. The face was mine. Margaret told me Henrik had taken the photograph the night before he disappeared. He had set the camera on a closet shelf with a self-timer. He had wanted a photograph of himself sleeping. He had told her he wanted to see his own face from outside. I keep the contact sheet and the negatives in a manila folder in my bedroom closet. The folder sits on the same shelf the camera was set on for frame 17. I have not photographed anything in my apartment since. I have not opened the closet at night. Margaret died in March. The funeral was small. She left a final letter for me with her nephew. The letter said only this. Henrik came back to the apartment 3 times after he disappeared. She had not been there for 2 of the visits. She had been there for the 3rd. He had taken a photograph of her sleeping. The photograph is on the contact sheet. I had not noticed her in frame 11 until last week.